Fighting a war isn't just about manpower and metal on the front. Behind the scenes lie the brains, the hubs that control propaganda and keep an entire military ticking. That is what the Dubna Space Communications Center is to Russia. Located in the Moscow region, this center is a key hub for everything from command and control centers on the front to the propaganda-laden messages that the Kremlin pumps into the eyes and ears of people inside Russia and occupied Ukraine. Dubna is key to the Russian war machine. Ukraine just lobotomized it. Putin and his cronies are scrambling as the smoke rises and a satellite hub burns. Confirmation of Ukraine's strike came on June 22nd as Ukraine's general staff confirmed that it had launched an assault on the Dubna Space Communications Center on June 21st and overnight into June 22nd. This is Ukraine breaching Moscow's air defenses again, and it just did it to take out a key target that nobody in the Kremlin would have seen coming. In a Telegram post, the general staff shared a picture of a thick, black plume of smoke rising from the Dubna center, along with a message confirming what Ukrainian forces had just carried out. The Space Communications Center Dubna in the Moscow region was hit. Large-scale smoke is observed at the facility. The enemy's losses are being specified, the general staff reported. More information has come from open-source reporters on the ground. The OSINT Intuit X account has released more imagery of the strike, along with a short video showcasing the plume of smoke rising. In the background, we appear to hear the sound of air defenses attempting to stop the weapons that Ukraine sent. They clearly failed. A key satellite station wouldn't be smoking if they had succeeded. What Ukraine has just achieved here is a massive blow to both Russia's frontline forces and the Kremlin's attempt to poison the minds of the people with its narrative. And to understand why, we need to explore the Dubna Center a little deeper. The facility actually has quite an interesting history, and once upon a time it served a relatively benign purpose. United 24 Media says that Dubna is considered to be one of Russia's largest satellite teleports, which are ground-based hubs that are used to connect satellites with terrestrial communications networks. Essentially, these hubs are needed to ensure that satellite TVs work, and that's what Dubna was initially built to do. Established in 1980 by the Soviet Communications Ministry, Dubna was built ahead of the Moscow Summer Olympics to broadcast live footage of the games to television stations in both Europe and the Americas. There's a sad irony here. The Olympics bring people of all nations together to compete in friendly competition with no politics or hatred involved. At least that's the spirit of the games, if not always how it goes down in execution. Dubna could and should have been a tool that Russia could use to foster togetherness and greater communication. But like so much in Russia, especially upon the rise of Vladimir Putin, it has been perverted to serve a military purpose. That perversion began soon after the Olympics ended, though it wasn't necessarily a bad thing at the time. As the Soviet Union was entering its final decade of existence, the Kremlin used Dubna to host secure communication channels with several Western powers. Negotiations would have been powered by this satellite hub, and it may well have played a role in helping post-Soviet Russia to build relationships with other powers. Over time, the hub has grown larger. Initially, it had a pair of large antennas. Now, Dubna has over 20 antennas of different sizes, which are used to handle the tracking, telemetry, and command operations for a large part of Russia's 300-strong satellite network. That sheer size means that Dubna sees inevitable use by the Russian military. And that's what we're seeing today. Though operated by the Russian Satellite Communications Company, which is ostensibly a civilian enterprise, Dubna is used by the Russian military, tied into both Russia's strategic intelligence and national defense networks. In occupied Ukraine, it's centers like Dubna that enable many of Russia's command and control centers to operate. This satellite hub plays a key role in enabling Russia to use drones and electronic warfare, or EW systems. And it does all of this while still serving its original purpose of ensuring television stations can broadcast to as many people as possible. Only now, those broadcasts are laced with Kremlin propaganda. And they're being beamed to people all over Russia and occupied Ukraine. All of this marks Dubna as a dual-use facility for Russia, and that made it a legitimate military target for Ukraine. Now, smoke is rising from Russia's satellite station. The full damage is still being assessed, as Ukraine's general staff pointed out. We don't know how many casualties were caused by this strike, if any. We also don't know specifically what Ukraine has managed to hit at the satellite center. It could be an antenna or two, or it could be the entire power base of the station itself. More will come from Ukraine over time. However, Russia has been surprisingly vocal about this most recent strike. Reuters reports that the Russian news agency TASS has provided a surprising amount of information for a state-run service that usually tries to keep news of Ukraine's strikes as quiet as possible. TASS reported that Dubna had come under a massive drone attack by the Ukrainian armed forces. It also claimed that television services hadn't been disrupted by this strike, though how true that is, given the source, is anybody's guess. TASS also claims that no staff at the center were injured by Ukraine's attack. So Russia is acting like it's business as usual at Dubna. But the pictures and videos of the smoke rising tell a very different story. Dubna was hit, and that means it can be hit again. If you've been keeping up with our reports of Ukraine's strikes, you'll know that there's a certain pattern in play. Ukraine rarely attacks just one target. When Ukraine's drones fly, they head to targets all over Russia and the occupied territories, and that's exactly what happened on June 21st into 22nd. As News Sky points out, Ukrainian forces also attacked several logistical and drone hubs at the same time as the drones headed toward Dubna. In the Zaporizhia region, Ukraine's drones attacked a road bridge near Vasilivka as part of its ongoing campaign to isolate Crimea. Traffic on that bridge has been suspended. That attack was accompanied by a strike against Port Kavkaz, which is in Russia's Krasnodar region. Ukraine hit a pair of ferries, both of which were used to carry supplies and military equipment. Again, Crimea was the ultimate target. These strikes are being carried out against nodes along the Kerch Strait, which Russia often uses to bypass the Kerch Bridge to get supplies in and out of Crimea. Beyond that, Ukraine also targeted drone control points, a drone operator training range, and several command and observation points in the occupied territories and Russia's Belgorod region. The latter are used to coordinate Russian strikes against Ukraine's Sumy and Kharkiv regions, News Sky reports. So June 21st was a busy day for Ukraine. But for as impressive as all of these other strikes were, especially those that continue the isolation campaign against Crimea, it's Dubna that grabs all of the headlines. For now, we'll operate under the assumption that Ukraine has done enough damage to shut Dubna down, if only temporarily. That leads us to the obvious question: what does all of this mean for the Ukraine war? Before we answer that question, this is a quick reminder that you're watching The Military Show. If you like what you see from the channel, then make sure you hit subscribe. We post videos like this every single day. Now here's what hitting Dubna means for both Ukraine and Russia. We'll start with the message that Ukraine just sent. The Dubna Satellite Center is in the Moscow Oblast. It's supposed to be untouchable. Surrounded by air defenses like everything else in Moscow and hundreds of kilometers away from the front lines, Dubna is supposed to be the sort of target that could never in a million years be hit by a drone. At least that's what Putin thought when he started his full-scale invasion in February 2022. And back then, Putin was right. Ukraine didn't have the tools it needed to carry out a strike like this. But this is 2026. And Ukraine not only has the tools, it's shown that it can consistently hit Moscow, and there's not much that Russian air defenses can do about it. The Dubna strike caused plenty of chaos beyond the smoke billowing out of Russia's satellite hub. The New Voice of Ukraine reports that Russia's beleaguered mayor, Sergei Sobyanin, claims that Russia's air defenses shot down almost 80 drones during the attack, and the strike caused a total of 367 flights to be cancelled or delayed at Moscow's various airports. We say beleaguered because Sobyanin has been forced to spend far too much time talking about Ukrainian drones and far too little time enjoying his life as a Putin crony in recent weeks. The Dubna strike was just the latest in several examples of Ukraine's drones hitting the Moscow Oblast. Less than a week before, on the night of June 17th into 18th, Ukrainian drones hit Moscow's main oil refinery, Kapotnya, in what Russian authorities called the largest attack on the region in the past 2 years. The strike was effective. Kapotnya burned, and Muscovites were left complaining about a black oil rain falling on them. Russia, of course, says that no such rain happened, but when you see the footage of the strike, which includes an oil storage tank literally blowing its top, possibly as a result of a failed Russian air defense missile striking it, then it's difficult to deny the impact of Ukraine's attack. Oil rain or not, Ukraine sent a message to Moscow on June 17th, which it repeated on June 21st. Moscow isn't just in range, it's an active target. And that's one of the major points of the Dubna attack. Regardless of the damage done to Russia's facilities, Ukraine is using these attacks to let Muscovites know that Putin can't protect their territory. The single most protected oblast in all of Russia has been hit hard twice in the space of a week, and damage has been done. Psychologically, that's a killer for Russia. Propaganda can't pretend everything is okay when residents of Moscow can see the smoke rising from oil refineries and satellite hubs. That smoke shows them that all of Ukraine's talk about having weapons that can strike targets up to 3,000 kilometers away isn't just bluster. It's very real, and Ukraine keeps on proving it. Speaking of propaganda, we'll be coming back to what the Dubna strike could mean on that front in a few minutes. First, there are the military implications of this strike to consider. Command posts, drone centers, and electronic warfare systems. All are reliant on Dubna working at full capacity, which means that the loss of this satellite hub could have a crippling impact on Russia's forces in the occupied territories and on the front lines of Ukraine. Remember what we mentioned about Dubna's many uses earlier. After the Olympics, Russia used the satellite to open up secure channels of communications with other countries. It's a fair assumption to make that command and control centers inside Ukraine are taking advantage of similar channels, especially now that Dubna has grown to the size that it has. Losing secure communications is bad for Russia. The same goes for losing the ability to collect data that Dubna provides. A command and control center is essentially a facility that a military uses to monitor, analyze, and manage critical systems, which means that each one serves as a central location from which commanders can direct troops and coordinate assaults on the front. To do that, communication has to be encrypted to ensure the enemy can't intercept messages, and the flow of data into the command and control center has to be uninterrupted to provide a commander with the best possible overview of the battlefield. If Dubna goes down, which may well happen following repeated strikes now that Ukraine has established that it can hit the satellite hub, then there would be absolute chaos in the Russian ranks. Frontline assaults would suffer most, and this would inevitably lead to more Russian casualties in a war that has already cost the country over 1.39 million people. Then there are the drones. Losing satellite-based communication between Moscow and command nodes inside Ukraine also means that commanders can't accurately instruct their drone units because they're not receiving orders. It's possible that Dubna also plays a role in aiding the satellite navigation built into many of Russia's strike drones. News Sky says that Dubna is critical for controlling unmanned aerial vehicles, so these are reasonable assumptions to make. As much has been made about Ukraine and its brilliant drone strategy against Russia, we can't ignore the fact that Russia makes heavy use of drones. In May alone, Russia launched a record-breaking 8,150 drones at Ukraine, which shows you the sheer volume of its long-range campaign. And according to the Moscow Times, Russia is planning on building 7.3 million FPV drones in 2026, which amounts to about 20,000 units per day. Make no mistake, Russian drones are a major threat to Ukraine. If Dubna has been shut down, even temporarily, then it means relief for Ukrainian troops and civilians. Russian drone units on the front will be forced to delay their strikes, especially if they're not getting information from command and control centers. And Russia's strike drones, which rely on satellite navigation to reach their targets, either won't be able to fly or will be much easier to intercept using air defenses and electronic warfare techniques. And speaking of EW, News Sky says that Dubna is also vital to Russia's use of these systems inside Ukraine. These types of systems typically work by jamming the satellite signals that an opposing system, such as a drone or missile, is using. For that to happen, Russia needs access to its satellite network to send the jamming signals. In particular, Russia wants to use downlink jamming, which the Modern War Institute at West Point says involves disrupting a satellite signal as it's on its way down to its receiver. Presumably, if News Sky is correct, Dubna was enabling Russia's EW systems to conduct this kind of jamming. If Dubna is down, that won't happen. And that means Ukraine's mid-range drones in particular become a lot more lethal. Those drones are already engaged in Ukraine's logistics lockdown campaign, which has been designed to shatter Russian logistics in the near rear. According to RBC Ukraine, the French open-source intelligence analyst Clément Mollin verified at least 500 of these types of strikes against Russian trucks and transport vehicles alone between May 1st and June 18th, all of which were confirmed using video evidence. Russia losing its EW systems means that more strikes like this will happen, which all feeds into Ukraine's ultimate goals of isolating Crimea and disrupting supplies to the front lines. All of this shows us that Dubna was a clear military target for Ukraine. But now let's focus on something a little more insidious. You may remember that we mentioned that Dubna is a key satellite hub for Russia's state-controlled TV. That essentially makes it an indirect spreader of the Kremlin's propaganda throughout Russia. State-controlled television exists to control the narrative, at least in Putin's eyes. We've seen the evidence of that in Russia even before Putin became president. For example, the attempted coup of Russia in 1993 led to a brutal battle over control of the Channel 1 station in Ostankino, which is Moscow's television center. Those attempting the coup then knew what Putin knows now. Controlling the airwaves means controlling minds. A report published by Marlborough College says that the average Russian watches around 4 hours of television per day, and Putin has been taking advantage of that fact to use Russian state TV to normalize the war in his own country. None of this is surprising. We all know that disinformation is one of the most important weapons in the Kremlin's arsenal. What is far more worrying for Ukraine is that Russia's propaganda-laden programming is being beamed into the occupied territory. That's been happening since the early months of the war. In December 2022, a BBC monitoring analysis revealed that Russia had either tried to force existing channels to report its version of the news or simply created new channels of its own in Zaporizhia and Kherson. Russia has also used the TRK Krim regional state media company that Russia set up in occupied Crimea to create programming that it deemed suitable for those in other occupied territories. In June 2025, the Kyiv Independent reported that Russia had removed over 1,000 pieces of equipment that provide access to Ukrainian television in the occupied territories in just a single week, with the goal being to poison the information space with more propaganda. Russia has even launched TV packages such as Russky Mir, which the outlet says includes 20 Kremlin-run state TV channels, along with 11 entertainment channels and 10 regional channels in the occupied oblasts of Ukraine. What all of this shows us is that Russia isn't just attempting to destroy Ukraine's military. Putin is taking aim at the cultural backbone of the country. Using television, the Kremlin is trying to Russify the occupied territories by pumping them so full of manipulated information that those who still live there start to believe Russia's version of events. But this approach mostly relies on satellite channels. Any disruption, such as what happened at Dubna, could break the attempts that the Kremlin is making at reprogramming the minds of those in the occupied territories. That, perhaps even more than the military aspects of the June 21st strike, may be the biggest victory that Ukraine achieves with Dubna. Now that Ukraine knows that it can hit the satellite hub, it will almost inevitably try again. And with follow-up strikes, we may see a lot more than smoke and unconfirmed reports of damage. We may well see the destruction of Russia's entire propaganda network inside Ukraine. Having said all of that, the loss of EW systems is very damaging to Russia. Taking out Dubna can make those systems useless, and we already know what the impact of Russian air defense techniques failing can have. Ukraine's strike against the Armyansk crossing that Russia is trying to use to feed Crimea shows us that. In a matter of minutes, Ukraine's drones destroyed 50 vehicles on that crossing, and EW wasn't able to stop them. Find out more by watching our video, and remember to subscribe to The Military Show if you want to see more coverage like this. And thank you for watching.